For those of you who are listening over the internet, you're listening to a webcast from Washington, D.C. by the international statesman and economist Lyndon LaRouche. Today is January 17th. Lynn, this is a question from somebody involved in a national campaign, and it's got many parts to it. I'll read you the whole thing, and then you can kind of figure out how you want to address it. He says, Mr. LaRouche, you've built what you call a firewall to protect what I assume you mean are the charter banks into your HVPA legislation. And I have several questions regarding this. I don't understand exactly why you call it a firewall. How would it function? It won't really stop the collapse as far as I can see. Second, and this is what I'm having the most problem with, the bank's exposure to the hedge funds and vice versa is such that I don't understand how you could separate one from the other, and I think this is what many people are having problems with. I also look at it in terms of the implications of Bank of America's acquisition of Countrywide, which is being promoted as something that was good for Bank of America, although I don't really understand how it could be. Since your legislation does seem to address the issue of protection for the banks, why does Wall Street have such a violent reaction against it? Also, finally, you've repeatedly said that the HVPA is only the first step. From the standpoint of domestic policy, I understand what you're saying about the four-power agreement, but from the standpoint of domestic policy, how would you immediately follow up on the HVPA? Because obviously there's more than just the mortgage crisis that has to be addressed.
Well, first of all, on the follow-up, let's take the last part of that first. The follow-up, the first thing I would do is to do what I proposed in the year 2005 and into 2006. I would say we would create a federal fund to reactivate what would otherwise will be the permanently lost machine tool capability embodied in the U.S.-owned auto industry. I would use this, for example, for building large-scale rail systems and nuclear power systems and other things which are desperately needed by the population. So we shift the flow of payments away from what is a hopeless cause, bailing out these crazy banks, like mortgage banks. We're just going to cancel them. They're bankrupt. They're honestly bankrupt. They're honestly financial bankrupt, and they have no useful function. Why should you save any of them? Why don't you declare them in bankruptcy? Is it because you don't have the guts to do so? As if Wall Street is polluted. If Wall Street says something is something, it's don't do it. They lie. They always lie. At this stage, there's no honesty there. Forget Wall Street. If you want to live with Wall Street, you're going to die. Maybe not what you chose, but what you chose in fact. Okay, so the key thing is there are things which are urgent, which done will revive the economy by reviving the creative, productive powers of the population, either directly in terms of the application to production or in terms of the infrastructure which catalyzes an improvement in productivity. In this period, because of we have a population, most people aren't worth employing. And in most cases, it's not their fault. They're not worth employing because they were never trained to be useful. They were trained to do make work, to seem to have a job, to seem to have a function, but no significant function to the benefit of the economy. It's just to keep them on maintenance, like a kindergarten, not developing people. So therefore, our biggest factor in recovery, there are cases where we require reindustrialization. That is, employing people like skilled machine tool people who were in the automobile industry as part of the machine tool factor, employing them in projects which we need desperately as a nation, and employing as many other people as auxiliaries of their work as possible. So we will not put a penny into bailing out the mortgage banks, not a single penny. We will defend the charter banks, period. Nothing else. Everything else was a swindle. Why should we bail out a swindle? Just because it was not called illegal, it's still a swindle. Okay? So therefore we will defend the banks because we are limited in what we can defend. And we must defend the charter banks, otherwise the entire system on which the economy's function depends will fall. And we have limited resources. We do not have infinite resources. And therefore we will reserve the subsidies from the federal government into long-term credit issued through the usual procedure to the federal government with the consent of the Congress for major projects of the type that people like Felix Rohatyn and company killed when I had proposed them in 2005 and 2006. If my policies had been continued in 2005, 2006, we would not be in the mess we're in today. Now it's later, but maybe it's not too late. Maybe we can still survive. So let's do it. And let's stop talking about these other things. They're not worth talking about. Hedge funds, well, we may need an expansion of the prison programs. I'm serious. Bloomberg, $11 billion. Look at it. How the hell did he get $11 billion? What kind of hokum did he pull? Who did he rob? He ought to be ashamed of himself to have that much money. Considering what's happening when, every street in New York, you're afraid to take one. It may be the one that collapses into a pit tomorrow. So that's the situation. So the point here is the charter bank is an essential institution for organizing the maintenance of protection and recovery of the American economy and the protection of its people. You've got to start from that. Don't start from the end run of somehow some jerk says that's not going to work, so-and-so doesn't like it. Of course they won't like it. You're taking their right to steal away from them. Huh? Their right to commit suicide, you're denying that. How cruel you are to do that. No need to apologize. Firewall is simply the fact that as we put up, the guy comes up to your bank and says, I got a claim on your accounts here. Look, I got this thing. You owe me this one. We got a firewall here, buddy. You get nothing. You go to the back of the line and wait. Put in your application. And when we get around to it, we'll talk to you. That's called a firewall.
Okay, then this question is from